What happens when the galaxy's most feared warriors meet the one species they never bothered to study? When arrogance meets ingenuity, when overwhelming force encounters human stubbornness, the results are unexpected. This is the story of how humanity's greatest weakness became their ultimate strength, and why the Korthak Empire learned too late that sometimes the prey can become the predator. They came expecting easy conquest. They found something else entirely. The Korthak flagship Deathbringer hung in space like a metallic predator, its hull scarred from 1,000 victories across the galaxy. Within its command center, Supreme War Commander Thex Vor studied the holographic display showing a small blue planet orbiting an unremarkable yellow star. His 6 eyes, each the size of a human fist, narrowed with disdain. "This is the species that dares to expand into our territory?" Thex Vor's voice rumbled through his massive chest, causing nearby subordinates to step back instinctively. At 12 feet tall and weighing nearly half a ton, the Supreme War Commander was considered small by Korthak standards. His species had evolved on a high-gravity world where only the strongest survived, and they had carried that philosophy to the stars. Sub-Commander Krelnax consulted his tactical display, his forearms working multiple interfaces simultaneously. Intelligence reports indicate they call themselves humans, carbon-based bipeds, averaging 6 feet in height, weighing roughly 200 pounds. They have established colonies on 17 worlds in the past 50 cycles. Thex Vor's mandibles clicked in amusement. 17 worlds. We have conquered 17 worlds in a single campaign season. What weapons do they possess? Primitive kinetic projectiles, basic energy weapons, and crude explosive devices. Their largest warships are barely 300 meters long. Our smallest destroyer outmasses their capital ships by a factor of 10. The command center erupted in laughter from the assembled Korthak officers. These beings had crushed the Zentari Confederation, absorbed the Mechanist collectives, and driven the Psychic Etherians into hiding in the Galactic Rim. Each victory had been swift and decisive. The pattern never varied. Overwhelming force applied at the enemy's weakest point, followed by complete subjugation or extinction. "How many warriors do they field?" Thex Vor asked, though his tone suggested the answer was irrelevant. "Approximately 2 billion across all their worlds, though only a fraction are trained soldiers. Their military structure is fragmented into numerous smaller organizations. They lack the unity of purpose that has made us victorious." Thex Vor turned to address the assembled war chiefs. Each commanded a battle group capable of reducing a planet to molten slag within hours. The Council of War has decreed that these humans represent a potential threat to our expansion. They are to be eliminated as an example to other species who might consider resisting our advance. War Chief Draktor stepped forward, his massive frame casting shadows across the holographic display. "Supreme Commander, surely this task does not require our full attention. A single battle group could sweep their colonies clean." "The Council demands thoroughness," Thex Vor replied. "These humans have spread across multiple systems. We will deploy the 1st, 2nd, and 3rd battle fleets simultaneously. Every human world will be struck at once. There will be no time for them to organize resistance or evacuate." The plan was elegant in its simplicity. 3 battle fleets, each containing hundreds of ships and millions of warriors, would emerge from hyperspace at predetermined coordinates. The human colonies would be surrounded, isolated, and destroyed before they could mount any meaningful defense. It was a strategy that had never failed. On Earth, in the subterranean command bunker beneath the Swiss Alps, Admiral Sarah Chen studied the same holographic displays that had captivated the Korthak leadership, but her expression was grim rather than amused. The difference was that her intelligence came from sources the Korthak had never suspected. Human colonies that had been established in secret, hidden behind sensor-masking asteroid fields, and within the electromagnetic chaos of stellar phenomena. "How long do we have?" asked General Marcus Rodriguez, the scarred veteran who commanded Earth's ground forces. "The long-range sensors picked up their fleet movements 6 days ago. Based on their heading and speed, they'll reach the outer colonies within 72 hours, Chen replied. Her fingers drummed against the metal table, a nervous habit she'd developed during the border wars against the Centauri separatists. 3 battle fleets, muttered Dr. Falstair. Elizabeth Vasquez, the civilian scientist whose presence in the military briefing room would have puzzled the Korthak. They understood conquest, but they had never grasped the human concept of rapid technological adaptation under pressure. That's over 2,000 ships according to our intelligence estimates. Chen nodded grimly. Against our 43 active warships and roughly 300 system defense platforms. On paper, we don't stand a chance. The silence that followed was broken by an unexpected sound. General Rodriguez's laughter. On paper, he repeated, shaking his head. Ma'am, when has humanity ever won anything on paper? Admiral Chen allowed herself a thin smile. Point taken, General. Dr. Vasquez, what's the status of Project Achilles? The scientist's eyes lit up with the enthusiasm that had made her the youngest department head in the Colonial Defense Initiative's history. The quantum resonance devices are installed and tested on all major installations. The new armor composites have been distributed to every ship and ground facility, and the psychological warfare protocols are uploaded to all communication networks. The Korthak won't know what hit them, Rodriguez added. They've studied our public technology exports, our commercial shipping manifests, even our entertainment broadcasts, but they've never seen what we can do when we stop playing nice. The truth was that humanity had learned hard lessons from their first contact with hostile alien species. The vegan trade wars had taught them that advertising your true capabilities was a luxury civilizations couldn't afford. Every human colony was required to maintain two separate technology bases, one for public consumption and trade, another for survival. In the Tau Ceci system, Captain James Park received the coded transmission while his frigate Defiance conducted what appeared to be routine patrol duties. The message was brief and used terminology that would have meant nothing to outside observers. Storm season approaching. Secure all livestock. Park turned to his first officer, Lieutenant Commander Anna Kowalski. Signal the fleet. All ships are to implement Protocol 7 immediately. What followed would have astonished any alien observer familiar with human technology exports. The Defiance, which had registered on Korthak sensors as a lightly armed patrol vessel, began to transform. External panels slid away to reveal weapon systems that had never appeared in any technical manual. The ship's power signature doubled, then tripled, as fusion reactors that had been running in standby mode came online. Similar transformations were taking place throughout human space. Merchant vessels revealed hidden missile launchers. Mining stations activated point defense systems that had been disguised as ore processing equipment. Even civilian habitats powered up shielding systems whose energy requirements would have been impossible to explain under normal circumstances. The Korthak had made a fundamental error in their intelligence gathering. They had assumed that what humans showed the galaxy represented the full extent of their capabilities. It was a mistake that more aggressive species rarely survive to regret. 3 days later, the first Korthak battle fleet emerged from hyperspace at the edge of the Ross 128 system, home to New Geneva, humanity's second-largest colony. Fleet Commander Zektal expected to find a handful of patrol boats and perhaps some civilian traffic fleeing toward the inner system. Instead, his sensors immediately detected over 40 human vessels in perfect formation, waiting. Impossible, Zektal muttered, his primary eyes focusing on the tactical display. Intelligence reported no more than 6 vessels assigned to this system. His tactical officer's voice carried the first note of uncertainty that any Korthak warrior had expressed regarding this campaign. Commander, the human vessels are not attempting to flee. They appear to be advancing. Through the vacuum of space, the human ships moved with a precision that spoke of countless hours of training and coordination. The Defiance led the formation, its hull now bristling with weapons that seemed to shift and reconfigure as Korthak sensors tried to lock onto them. Open communications with the human commander, Zektal ordered. Perhaps they wished to surrender. The response that came back would be recorded in Korthak military archives as the first indication that this campaign would not proceed as planned. This is Captain James Park of the Colonial Defense Force. The human's voice was steady, almost conversational. You have entered human territorial space with hostile intent. You have one opportunity to withdraw. I strongly advise you to take it. The bridge of the Korthak flagship fell silent. In 300 years of conquest, no enemy had ever offered them the opportunity to retreat. Zektal's mandibles clicked in what passed for laughter among his species. Human commander, you face the 3rd battle fleet of the Korthak Empire. We have 600 ships and 3 million warriors. Surrender now, and your deaths will be quick. That's unfortunate, Park's voice came back, still maddeningly calm. You should have taken the offer. What happened next violated everything the Korthak understood about warfare. The human ships didn't mass their firepower against the Korthak flagship, nor did they attempt to break through the battle line to escape. Instead, they seemed to simply vanish. Where did they go? Zektal demanded as his sensor operators frantically adjusted their equipment. Unknown commander. They were there, and then they weren't. No hyperspace signatures, no energy emissions consistent with cloaking devices. The answer came in the form of weapons fire from directions that should have been impossible. The human ships had somehow moved behind, below, and within the Korthak formation without being detected. Their weapons struck with surgical precision, targeting not the heavily armored hulls of Korthak vessels, but specific systems: sensors, communications arrays, and weapon targeting systems. "Return fire," Zegtal roared, but his ships were firing at ghost images and sensor shadows. The humans had somehow managed to make their own vessels effectively invisible while maintaining perfect targeting solutions on their enemies. The battle that followed would be studied in military academies for generations, though the Korthak archives would be sealed and classified. 43 human ships engaged, 600 Korthak vessels in a running fight that lasted 18 hours. When it was over, the Third Battle Fleet had lost 230 ships, while the humans had lost exactly none. The surviving Korthak vessels limped away from Ross 128, their commanders struggling to understand what they had witnessed. Their enemy had violated the basic principles of warfare. Smaller forces did not defeat larger ones, primitive technology did not overcome advanced systems, and vastly outnumbered defenders did not pursue retreating attackers. But the humans had done all of these things. In the command bunker on Earth, Admiral Chen watched the tactical reports streaming in from across human space. The Second Battle Fleet had met similar defeats at Kepler 442 and Wolf 1061. The First Battle Fleet had actually retreated from the Gliese 67C system without engaging after witnessing the destruction of their scout forces. "The Korthak are regrouping," reported Commander Lisa Zhang from the Intelligence Division. "They're pulling back to the edge of our monitored space. Communications intercepts suggest they're requesting reinforcements." Dr. Vasquez looked up from her analysis of the battle data. "They're going to send their best warriors next, the ones they were saving for more dangerous opponents." General Rodriguez nodded grimly. "They think they lost because they underestimated us. They're about to make the same mistake again, but with better soldiers." Admiral Chen stood and walked to the star map that dominated one wall of the command center. Humanity's colonies were marked in blue, spreading across dozens of systems in a loose network of trade routes and communication relays. The Korthak Empire was marked in red, a vast swath of conquered territory that dwarfed human space. "They still don't understand," she said quietly. "They think this is about technology or numbers or even strategy." "What is it about?" asked Dr. Vasquez. Chen turned back to face the assembled officers and civilians who represented humanity's best hope for survival. "It's about the fact that we've never been the strongest species in the galaxy, or the smartest, or the most advanced. We've always been the ones who had to figure out how to win anyway." The first phase of the war was over. Humanity had bloodied the nose of the galaxy's most feared empire and lived to tell about it. But everyone in the command bunker understood that the real test was yet to come. The Korthak would not underestimate them again. What they didn't realize was that humanity was counting on exactly that response. The Eternal Conquest, flagship of the Korthak Imperial Guard, emerged from hyperspace like a predator stalking wounded prey. At over 4 kilometers long, the massive dreadnought dwarfed even the largest vessels in the regular battle fleets. Its hull bore the scars of campaigns against species whose names had been erased from galactic memory, and its weapon systems could crack the crust of a planet. Supreme War Marshal Vex Koth stood before the massive view screen in the command cathedral, his towering frame encased in ceremonial armor that had been forged from the metals of 1,000 conquered worlds. Unlike the regular Korthak military, the Imperial Guard were warriors who had proven themselves against the galaxy's most dangerous opponents. They were the ones called upon when conventional forces failed. "Report," Vex Koth commanded, his voice carrying the absolute authority of one who had never known defeat. Battle Coordinator Yex Nal approached with carefully measured steps. Even among the Imperial Guard, few dared to address the War Marshal directly. The human colonies remain active across 17 systems. Initial assault fleets report unexpected resistance. The phrase hung in the air like a blasphemy. Vex Koth turned slowly, his 6 eyes fixing on the coordinator with an intensity that had reduced veteran warriors to stammering recruits. "Explain unexpected resistance." "The humans employed technological capabilities not present in our intelligence assessments. Their ships demonstrated stealth systems, advanced targeting protocols, and coordinated tactics that suggest a unified command structure." "Casualties?" 412 ships destroyed or disabled across 3 battle fleets. The humans report 0 losses. The silence that followed was absolute. In the 3 centuries since the formation of the Imperial Guard, no enemy had achieved victory ratios like these. The Etherian mine masters had been dangerous, but they fell to overwhelming force. The Mechanist collectives had possessed superior technology, but they lacked the ruthlessness to use it effectively. Even the legendary Zavirian warrior clans had eventually been ground down by sheer numbers. "Bring me the intelligence files," Vexkoth ordered. "Everything we know about human military capability." What followed was a comprehensive review that would have impressed any military analyst. The Korthak had indeed been thorough in their preparation. They knew the specifications of every human weapon system that had ever been exported, the performance characteristics of every ship class that had been observed in neutral space, and the organizational structure of every colonial defense force. The problem was that all of this intelligence was deliberately misleading. "Show me the tactical recordings from Ross 128, Vexkoth commanded. The holographic display filled with the chaotic imagery of space combat. Korthak sensors had tracked 43 human vessels engaging 600 Imperial ships. The humans moved with impossible coordination, their vessels appearing and disappearing from sensors in patterns that suggested technology far beyond what they had previously demonstrated. "Analysis?" Vexkoth asked his tactical specialists. Senior battle analyst Kex Thor stepped forward, his multiple limbs manipulating data displays with mechanical precision. "The humans appear to have developed a quantum phase displacement system that renders their ships effectively invisible to our sensors while maintaining full combat effectiveness. Their weapons demonstrate targeting accuracy that exceeds theoretical limitations for their reported technology base." "Theories on how they acquired such capabilities?" "Unknown, War Marshal. The technology appears to be of human origin, but represents advancement far beyond their previous demonstrated level." Vexkoth studied the recordings for several more hours, watching human ships dance through Korthak battle formations like phantoms made of death and determination. His tactical mind, honed by centuries of warfare, began to identify patterns that troubled him deeply. "These humans fight like they expected us," he finally said. "Every maneuver is designed to counter specific Korthak tactical doctrines. They knew exactly what we would do before we did it." The implication was staggering. Either the humans possessed intelligence capabilities that had penetrated the highest levels of Korthak military planning, or they understood Korthak psychology so thoroughly that they could predict Imperial strategy with perfect accuracy. "Marshal," Battle Coordinator Yexnal ventured carefully, "perhaps we should consider alternative approaches. A diplomatic solution, or economic pressure through blockade." The War Marshal's response was swift and final. Yexnal's body hit the deck plating with a sound that echoed through the command cathedral. "The Imperial Guard does not negotiate," Vexkoth announced to the assembled officers. "We do not retreat. We do not accept defeat. We are the sword of the Empire, and we cut through every obstacle." But even as he spoke, Vexkoth was privately acknowledging that this enemy represented a challenge unlike any he had faced. The humans had demonstrated tactical flexibility, technological innovation, and strategic thinking that suggested they would not be easily broken by conventional assault. "Prepare the Omega Protocols," he commanded. "If these humans wish to test themselves against our finest, they shall have their wish." The Omega Protocols represented the Imperial Guard's ultimate expression of warfare. Rather than massive fleet actions designed to overwhelm enemy forces, Omega deployment focused on surgical strikes carried out by the most elite warriors in Korthak space. Each Omega unit consisted of exactly 100 warriors, equipped with the finest personal weapons and armor the Empire could provide, trained from birth in every conceivable form of combat. 3 systems, 3 Omega units. The humans would learn what it meant to face opponents who viewed death as merely another tactical consideration. On Earth, the mood in the command bunker had shifted from cautious optimism to grim determination. The intelligence reports were clear. The Korthak were no longer treating humanity as a minor irritation to be swept aside. They had committed their most elite forces, and the nature of warfare was about to change dramatically. "They're not coming with fleets this time," Admiral Chen reported to the assembled leadership. "Stealth insertions, small unit tactics, surgical strikes against key installations." General Rodriguez nodded approvingly. "Finally, they're playing our game instead of theirs." Vasquez looked up from her tactical analysis. The Korthak Imperial Guard represents the absolute pinnacle of their military evolution. Each warrior is genetically enhanced, cybernetically augmented, and trained from childhood for combat. They're not soldiers in any sense we understand. They're living weapons. "How many?" asked Commander Zhang. 300 total, divided into 3 units, 1 for each of our primary colonies, New Geneva, Haven, and Kepler Station. The number seemed almost laughably small compared to the thousands of ships the Korthak had previously deployed, but everyone in the room understood that these would be the most dangerous opponents humanity had ever faced. What do we know about their capabilities? Chen asked. Dr. Vasquez activated a holographic display showing the reconstructed profile of the Korthak Imperial Guard warrior. The figure was impressive even by Korthak standards. Nearly 15 feet tall, armored in what appeared to be a living metal that could adapt to different threats, and carrying weapons that had never been seen outside the Imperial arsenal. Personal energy shields, adaptive camouflage, weapons that can punch through a meter of hardened steel, she recited. They're faster than our best athletes, stronger than our heaviest equipment, and trained in combat techniques we don't even have names for. Weaknesses? Rodriguez asked. Unknown. No Imperial Guard warrior has ever been captured alive, and no battlefield has ever yielded intact equipment for study. The silence that followed was broken by an unexpected voice. Colonel Michael Chen, Admiral Chen's younger brother and commander of the Colonial Marine Forces, had been listening quietly from his position near the back of the room. They have one weakness, he said, stepping forward. They've never fought humans before. Admiral Chen raised an eyebrow. Explain. Every species they've conquered, they've studied for years before engaging. They know exactly what to expect, how their enemies think, how they react under pressure, what their breaking points are. But they've been studying our public face, not our military reality. Vasquez nodded slowly. The Korthak understand warfare as practiced by species that evolve to fight their own kind. They've never encountered opponents who develop their military doctrines by studying alien psychology. More than that, Rodriguez added, they've never faced an enemy that actively enjoys being outnumbered. It was a peculiarly human trait, one that had puzzled alien observers since first contact. While most species sought to maximize their numerical advantages and minimize risk, humans had a documented tendency to view overwhelming odds as motivation rather than deterrent. The Omega units will insert at 3 locations simultaneously, Admiral Chen continued. New Geneva, Haven, and Kepler Station. Each facility represents a critical node in our defense network. If they succeed in destroying even one, our ability to coordinate system-wide resistance will be severely compromised. Then we make sure they don't succeed, Colonel Chen replied. Each site will be defended by Alpha Company. Vasquez frowned. That's only 300 Marines total, the same number as the Korthak force. Exactly, the colonel smiled. Fair odds. The comment would have been dismissed as bravado by any rational observer. Alpha Company represented the best soldiers humanity could produce, but they were still baseline humans, facing genetically and cybernetically enhanced alien warriors equipped with superior technology. What the observers would have missed was the tactical doctrine that had guided human military development since the first alien contact. While other species had focused on developing better soldiers, humanity had concentrated on developing better ways to fight. 3 days later, Omega Unit 1 materialized on the surface of New Geneva through a teleportation system that bypassed every sensor and defensive screen the humans possessed. The 100 Korthak warriors spread out across the landscape in perfect formation, their adaptive camouflage rendering them effectively invisible to the human defenders. Squad leader Tex Var studied the human installation through sensors that could detect life signs through solid rock. The facility appeared to be a standard military command center, defended by conventional weapons and staffed by perhaps 50 personnel. It would fall within minutes. The first indication that the mission might not proceed as planned came when Tex Var's advanced sensors detected exactly 100 human life signs surrounding the Korthak insertion point. The humans had somehow known exactly where and when the attack would come. Impossible, Tex Var muttered into his communication system. Stealth insertion protocols are undetectable by primitive sensors. The response came not from his fellow warriors, but from a human voice speaking flawless Korthak military dialect. Alpha Company to Omega Unit 1. Welcome to New Geneva. We've been waiting for you. Before the Korthak warriors could react, the ground beneath their feet erupted in precisely coordinated explosions. Not enough to kill warriors in Imperial Guard armor, but sufficient to separate them from their carefully maintained formation. What followed was unlike any battle in recorded galactic history. Instead of the traditional Korthak tactic of overwhelming force applied at the point of maximum enemy weakness, the engagement became a deadly game of cat and mouse played across the entire surface of New Geneva. The humans had turned the planet itself into a weapon. Every building contained hidden passages, every piece of terrain had been modified to provide firing positions and escape routes, and every piece of equipment served multiple purposes. What appeared to be communication arrays were actually camouflaged weapon systems. Civilian structures contained military-grade defensive positions. More disturbing to the Korthak warriors was the way their human opponents fought. Imperial Guard training emphasized individual excellence and small unit coordination, but the humans moved like a single organism with 100 different arms. They appeared where they were needed, struck where their enemies were weakest, and vanished before retaliation could be organized. Unit leader to command. HFY transmitted during a brief lull in the fighting. Human resistance exceeds all projections. Request immediate reinforcement. The response from the Eternal Conquest carried the cold fury of Supreme War Marshal Vexkoth. Omega units do not request reinforcement. Complete your mission or accept the consequences of failure. 6 hours into the battle, Omega Unit 1 had lost 37 warriors. The humans had lost 12. The mathematics of the engagement violated everything the Korthak understood about warfare. Their superior equipment, enhanced physiology, and advanced training should have rendered them effectively invulnerable to human weapons. The problem was that the humans weren't fighting Korthak warriors. They were fighting the Korthak understanding of how warfare should be conducted. While HFY's warriors sought to close with their opponents and bring their superior individual capabilities to bear, the humans refused to cooperate. They struck from range, used the terrain to negate Korthak advantages, and coordinated their attacks with a precision that suggested they could read each other's minds. "They're not fighting like soldiers," Warrior Prime Dex Cole observed during another brief respite. "They're fighting like a pack," HFY finished grimly. It was a concept that existed in Korthak philosophy but had never been observed in practice. Individual warriors acting with perfect coordination toward a common goal, each member supporting the others in ways that transcended mere tactical coordination. The battle for New Geneva continued for 18 more hours. When it finally ended, Omega Unit 1 had been reduced to 23 survivors, all of whom were wounded and running low on ammunition. Alpha Company had lost 41 Marines, but their mission was complete. The Korthak assault had been stopped. Similar results came from Haven and Kepler Station. The most elite warriors in the Korthak Empire had been defeated by human soldiers who shouldn't have stood a chance against them. Supreme War Marshal Vexkoth stared at the casualty reports with an expression that his subordinates had never seen before: uncertainty. The Imperial Guard had failed, not through any fault in equipment or training, but because they had encountered an enemy that didn't follow the rules by which the galaxy had always conducted warfare. "Orders, War Marshal?" asked Baffle Coordinator Nextal, who had replaced his predecessor after the unfortunate incident with the deck plating. Vexkoth continued to study the tactical recordings from all three battlefields. The humans had demonstrated capabilities that went far beyond mere technological advancement. They had shown a fundamental understanding of warfare that was both alien and terrifyingly effective. "Signal the High Command," he finally ordered. "The human problem requires a different approach." The Korthak High Command Chamber had witnessed the planning of countless campaigns across the galaxy, but never had its ancient walls contained such an atmosphere of uncertainty. 12 members of the Supreme Council sat in perfect silence, each representing a different aspect of the Empire's military might, each struggling to comprehend how their most elite forces had been defeated by a species they had dismissed as primitive. Supreme Overlord Kexvan, eldest of the Council and architect of the Korthak's 3-century expansion, finally broke the silence. "Report the full extent of our losses." War Marshal Vexkoth stood before the assembled leadership, his ceremonial armor bearing new scars from the battles he had personally supervised. Total casualties across all engagements: 1,437 ships destroyed or disabled, 8 million warriors killed or wounded, and 3 complete Omega units eliminated. The numbers hung in the air like an accusation. In 300 years of conquest, the Korthak Empire had never sustained losses on such a scale from a single campaign. "Human casualties?" asked Council Member Tex Noll, commander of the Eastern Expansion Fleets. "Approximately 2,000 military personnel and 0 civilian casualties. The humans appear to have evacuated non-combatants before each engagement." Council Member Yex Dar leaned forward, his massive frame creaking the reinforced chair beneath him. "How is this possible? Our intelligence indicates that humanity possesses fewer than 50 million trained soldiers across all their colonies." Vexkoth activated a holographic display showing the tactical analysis from recent battles. "The answer lies not in the quantity of their forces, but in their approach to warfare itself. The humans have developed military doctrines that are fundamentally different from anything we have encountered." The display showed recorded footage from the Battle of Ross 128, where 43 human ships had defeated 600 Korthak vessels. Even viewing the recordings for the dozenth time, the council members found the results difficult to accept. They coordinate their forces in ways that transcend individual unit capabilities, Vex Koth continued. Their ships, their soldiers, even their civilian populations act as components of a single organism. When we destroy one element, the others adapt instantly to compensate. Supreme Overlord Kex Van studied the recordings with the tactical mind that had conquered half the galaxy. Show me the engagement at New Geneva. The holographic display shifted to show the battle between Omega Unit 1 and Alpha Company. The Korthak warriors moved with the precision and power that had made them the most feared soldiers in known space, but their human opponents seemed to flow around them like water finding cracks in stone. Our warriors fought as they were trained, Vex Koth observed, each individual maximizing their personal capabilities, each unit executing proven tactical doctrines. But the humans fought as if they could predict our every move, finished Council Member Rex Tal, who commanded the Psychological Operations Division. Every counterattack struck at precisely the moment when our warriors were most vulnerable. Every retreat drew our forces into predetermined kill zones. The death of this is precious. The implications were staggering. Either humanity possessed intelligence capabilities that had penetrated the deepest levels of Korthak security, or they understood Korthak psychology and tactics so thoroughly that they could predict Imperial strategy with perfect accuracy. There is a third possibility, said War Marshal Vex Koth quietly. The humans may have designed their entire military doctrine specifically to counter opponents like us. The council chamber fell silent as the full weight of that statement sank in. For 3 centuries, the Korthak had refined their approach to warfare by fighting species that had developed their militaries to combat their own kind. But what if humanity had studied alien warfare patterns and designed their forces specifically to exploit the weaknesses of non-human psychology? Impossible, declared Council Member Bex Tor. They are a young species, barely spacefaring for 2 centuries. They lack the experience to develop such sophisticated military theory. Perhaps, Vex Koth replied. Or perhaps inexperience is exactly what allowed them to approach warfare from directions we never considered. Supreme Overlord Kex Van rose from his ceremonial throne, his ancient frame still imposing despite his advanced age. Present your recommendations, War Marshal. The traditional approach has failed, Vex Koth stated bluntly. Direct assault, elite insertion, and overwhelming force have all proven ineffective. The humans have demonstrated that they can counter any conventional military response we deploy. Then what do you propose? Total war, not conquest, not subjugation, but complete extermination. We deploy the planet killers. The suggestion sent shockwaves through the council chamber. The planet killers were weapons of last resort, massive constructs capable of cracking the crust of a world and rendering it uninhabitable. They had been used only 3 times in Korthak history, against enemies whose resistance had proven so determined that conventional conquest was impossible. The humans have 17 colonies across 14 systems. Vex Koth continued. We deploy planet killers to each system simultaneously. No warnings, no negotiations, no opportunity for evacuation. Complete sterilization. Council Member Rex Tal raised an objection. Such an approach would eliminate any possibility of acquiring human technology or understanding their tactical innovations. Their tactical innovations are specifically designed to defeat us, Vex Koth replied. They serve no purpose in our arsenal. And their technology, while effective, appears to be based on principles that would be difficult to integrate with our existing systems. Supreme Overlord Kex Van considered the proposal carefully. The planet killers represented the ultimate expression of Korthak military philosophy. If an enemy could not be conquered, it would be eliminated entirely. It was a brutal solution, but it was also final. Prepare the planet killers, he ordered. Humanity will be removed from the galaxy. But even as the council made its decision, events were already in motion that would render their plans meaningless. In the Sol system, Admiral Chen stood before a gathering that represented the greatest collection of human military and scientific talent ever assembled in one location. The underground facility had been constructed specifically for this moment, its massive chambers capable of housing the leadership of every human colony and military formation. The Korthak have committed their planet killers, she announced without preamble. Our intelligence sources confirm that 14 massive constructs are currently en route to human space. Estimated time to first target, 72 hours. The assembled leaders absorbed this information with the calm professionalism that had become humanity's signature trait in the face of overwhelming odds. There were no outcries, no demands for evacuation plans. Only quiet determination and the absolute confidence that somehow humanity would find a way to survive. Options? Asked General Rodriguez. Doctor. Vasquez activated a holographic display showing the approaching planet killers. Each construct was the size of a small moon, powered by forces that could reshape the fundamental structure of matter. Conventional defense is impossible. These weapons are designed to be unstoppable by any known technology.
Unknown technology? Suggested Colonel Chen.
Possibly, Dr. Vasquez replied. Project Prometheus has yielded some interesting results, but nothing we've tested on this scale. Admiral Chen turned to address the full assembly. Ladies and gentlemen, we have reached the point where conventional military solutions are no longer viable. The Korthak have decided that if they cannot conquer us, they will eliminate us entirely. She paused, letting the weight of those words settle over the room. This brings us to a decision point that humanity has never faced before. Do we attempt to flee, scattering our population across the galaxy in the hope that some fragment of our species will survive? Or do we stand and fight, knowing that failure means extinction? The vote was unanimous. Then we implement the Lazarus Protocol, Admiral Chen announced. God help us all. The Lazarus Protocol was humanity's most closely guarded secret, a contingency plan so radical that its very existence had been known to fewer than a dozen individuals. It represented the ultimate evolution of human military thinking. If you cannot defeat your enemy through conventional means, change the fundamental nature of the conflict itself. Over the next 48 hours, human colonies across known space began implementing procedures that would have been considered impossible by any outside observer. Entire populations disappeared from planetary surfaces. Massive installations were abandoned seemingly overnight, and the electromagnetic signatures that had marked human presence for 2 centuries simply vanished. The Korthak planet killers arrived at their targets to find empty worlds. This is impossible, declared Fleet Commander Nexvoth as his sensors swept the Ross 128 system. Intelligence confirmed over 2 million human inhabitants on New Geneva. The colony should be visible from orbit. But New Geneva appeared to be nothing more than an uninhabited world with some unusual geological formations. There were no cities, no energy signatures, no indication that humans had ever established a presence there. Full sensor sweep, Nexvoth ordered. Check for underground installations, camouflage facilities, anything that might explain where they went. The results were baffling. The sensors detected vast cave systems that hadn't appeared in previous surveys, mineral formations that seemed to shift and change when not directly observed, and energy patterns that defied classification. Commander, his sensor operator reported with obvious confusion, "I'm detecting life signs, but what? They're not human. At least, not entirely human. The genetic patterns are altered." Similar reports were coming in from every system. The human colonies had not been evacuated. They had been transformed into something else entirely. The first indication of what humanity had become manifested near Kepler Station, where Planet Killer 7 had taken position to begin the sterilization process. The massive construct sensors detected movement in what should have been empty space, and then the stars themselves seemed to shift. What emerged from the stellar background was impossible. By every law of physics, the Korthak understood. Ships that appeared to be constructed from living rock, their surfaces pulsing with organic rhythms. Weapons that seemed to channel the power of stellar phenomena directly. And crew members who registered as human on genetic scanners but whose biological signatures suggested capabilities far beyond baseline humanity.